I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. Whoa. Hey, hey. Whoa, oh, 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 whoa, oh, 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 oh.
And now, live from beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're watching My Fellow Americans with your host, Spike Cohen.
Hey, thank you. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes, welcome to the show. Thank you. I'm clapping for you. Keep clapping. Clap for the miracle. How would we know you want the miracle if you didn't keep clapping? Welcome to My Fellow Americans. I am literally Spike Cohen. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday, February the 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, curling up late at night with your loved one, possibly, or not, and listening to this. Well, it's not going to be a romantic episode, I can promise you that, but I in myself am somewhat romantic, so you're welcome for that. And so thank you for tuning in. This is a Muddied Waters Media production. Check us out on Facebook, on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on SoundCloud, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, any kind of podcasting app. Check us out. Muddied Waters Media, taking over. Thank you, as always, to Kroger for this delicious purified drinking water. You can't see that. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. This purified drinking water that I drink on this and every episode of My Fellow Americans. Thank you so much to Kroger. Bluvanaka. Let's see, what else do we have here? The intro and outro music that I play on this and every episode of My Fellow Americans is from the amazing and talented Mr. Joe Davi. That's Jodavi. Check him out on Facebook. Check him out on SoundCloud. Check out his Bandcamp. He's on Bandcamp. Buy all of his music. It's going to cost you like $10. Buy all of his music. You'll be so happy, Mr. Joe Davi. Thank you again. Shout out to Tehran Turks' mom as always. Guys, my guest tonight is one of the coolest Republicans in Detroit history, which I say as an intentional snub to Sonny Bono. He is the former state director of African American engagement of the Michigan Republican Party. He is the head of American Urban Strategies, and he is the host of the Wayne Bradley Show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to My Fellow Americans, the talented Mr. Wayne Bradley. Wayne, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Spike, for having me on the show. It's an honor.
I'm really excited. I asked you to come on like months ago, I think, or weeks ago anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I was waiting, man. I kept seeing all these other folks on here. I saw Shelby on. I'm like, man, when am I going to get an invite to come on here and hang out with Spike? So thank you.
I think I actually, well, thank you. I think I actually invited the two of you on at the same time, if I recall. But
Nah,
but yeah, no,
man, she was on there before me, man. She was way on there before.
No,
She's
no,
a
she was
superstar, though.
right. She was on before you, but I think the invites went on. Anyway, I'm glad that you're on. And guys, be sure to
Thank
comment with any questions or thoughts that you have for me and Wayne, and we will tell you if you're right or wrong. Wayne, first of all, I want to start with obviously the most pressing question here. You are a Detroit native.
Yes.
You are clearly an African American, and yet for some reason, you are a Dallas Cowboys fan. Unpack that for us.
Well, I mean, let's really think about this. The Lions. I am 42 years old, and the Lions have won one playoff game my whole life. I mean, I was probably almost a teenager before I saw them even play in the playoffs. So by the time that I was of age to make a decision, this is during the 90s.
Right.
3 Super Bowls. It was pretty obvious. I mean, we had a great running back in Barry Sanders, but the Dallas Cowboys were just that team. And really before that, it was Tony Dorsett. So I just always had a gravitational pull to America's team. And, we got to get back to where we need to be, you know.
So this was a very 90s decision then.
Yes, very well. 80s, 90s. Like I said, Tony Dorsett was there before that. We had some rough years between when Jerry bought the team. So, like I said, I was a Cowboys fan before Jerry. So before Jerry bought the team. So
you're not a bandwagoner. You just were like, this is the winning team.
Yeah, I was hurt watching what Jerry was doing over the last year or so, but I realized, I was one of these guys like, oh man, I might not be able to support the Cowboys the way Jerry's been acting.
Right.
But I realized that I love the Cowboys more than I love Jerry. And Jerry was he was an owner of the team, but I was a fan before he was ever an owner. So that's how I've had to make peace with myself.
Fair enough. At least you're not a Patriots fan. So, that's fair enough.
And Tom Brady is the quarterback of Wolverine. That would never happen.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That would never happen.
Oh, yeah, you definitely couldn't do that, right? Because he wasn't a Spartan.
That would never happen.
The extent I know about college and professional football rivalry is from my Facebook friends. I'll watch the Super Bowl and I might catch like a couple playoff games or whatever, but like I'm not heavily into it. So I appreciate you guys for keeping me in the know on the various rivalries and everything. So
pure fanatic.
Right, exactly. So the way I start off with any new guest is I ask you guys, how would you describe your political beliefs, and then how would you say you got there? Was it like an aha moment or kind of a over time, like a gradual evolution to your beliefs? Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I think it was overall it was a gravitational thing. I think when I was in college, the first thing I noticed, and it was funny because now that's not even a big issue anymore, but at the time when I just got up to Michigan State University, the young Dems at the time were having this marriage equality. And even back then, it wasn't even marriage equality, I don't think, but it was just something regarding gay rights or something. And I mean, I went to Catholic school for 8 years, my pastor, I call him the Black Rick Santorum. So, I mean, I just grew up in a very conservative family. And I didn't even recognize it until I got to college. That was the first step was that, like, okay, some of my friends were going to this protest, and I'm like, I don't have nothing against anybody, but I'm not about to go protesting for that, and
right.
This and I remember getting criticism from guys. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not a Democrat, and so that was 94, 95, 96. Bob Dole ran, and his running mate ended up becoming the guy that had made me want to be a Republican, which was Jack Kemp. And so that was probably the beginning of my Republican roots. It was way back then, but I always point to my pastor, who was, like I said, extremely conservative and always about the two things that you probably see me getting, people always go, I'm always about protecting Israel, because that's been a big thing. And look, and I tell people, like, yeah, I know Israel's not perfect, right? But this is what I learned all my life. My pastor would always say, we can't be a blessed nation. Right. Yeah, and so those were the couple things that kind of started it. And then I would say about the final couple things that really solidified it for me were my grandfather died in 1999. He was the first Black anesthesiologist in the state of Michigan.
Oh, wow. And
so he had a little money to leave to the family. And that's when I found out about inheritance taxes.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, that's what I found out about, and literally how, he, was supposed to take care of the grandkids, and literally watching them cut a check, a 6-figure check, just directly to the IRS. And I said,
Right.
wow, what is that all about?
For nothing. Right.
Nothing. Like, well, he paid taxes all his life. How do you steal after you die? And that was probably the nail in the coffin for me. Like, yeah, I don't think I'm a Democrat if this is the kind of stuff if this is the kind of stuff that the people are willing to do to put money into the government. And I just, so right around 99, 2000, I was a Republican for it was cool to be a black Republican, I would say.
Because you found out taxation is theft firsthand.
A long time ago. Yep, that was my first experience with taxation being theft was in 1999. So
that's funny. Well, that'll do it. Nothing pulls you to the right or towards, I guess either libertarian or conservative, like having to write a big check to the IRS. That's just it's like, which by the way is why they do the withholding from people, because then instead you just have this little bit taken from you each time. You're not really thinking about it, and then when April comes around, or March or February or whatever, you get this big check and you're like, oh, thanks IRS, and you're not realizing that's
their people are really literally mad right now because their tax refund is smaller,
right? Because they didn't take it,
because they didn't take the money out in the first place. And it's like,
right.
I get it, like for people that live week to week, check to check, and you have kids, and you really do count on this big swoon of, big land full of money,
right?
At one time, I can get it how that can be disappointing, but people were enjoying having more money in their paychecks as well. So I just, I had friends at the IRS that told me, Wayne, there's going to be some people really upset come tax return time, because they're so used to their tax return being their, vacation money or something home improvement or something. And so when that money is reduced, obviously people are upset about that. So
there's like a ton of people that couldn't flip it on their mixtape and stuff. It upset a lot of people, right? Like it's very I know
it's serious business with people. When you tell and it shows now, when we had this work, the partial government shutdown,
right?
Within 2 to 3 weeks, people were at food kitchens, and so people are living check to check, and I don't judge anyone on that, because I've been there.
Right.
When people are really counting on that money, I can see that, but I think that people have to also be aware of that you receive more money, and it was your money to begin with. You should not be happy to receive your money back.
Your own money, or some, not even all of it, some of your own money back. That was stolen from you.
You overpaid. You overpaid is what they're telling you.
Right, exactly. Like, yeah, so it's crazy to me. But okay, so that makes sense. So you would say you weren't. I guess maybe when you were younger, you might have identified as a Democrat or a left winger, but it was more, I'm black, therefore I'm a Democrat type of thing. Or?
I think I grew up in, and I always tell people this. I grew up in what I would call a split household. My father was a healthcare executive.
Okay.
So he was more definitely on the management side of things. And my mom was a teacher in the Detroit Public Schools. So, I mean, it doesn't get any more in terms of being a union teacher in the city of Detroit.
Right.
But my mom was the one that took me to church every Sunday in terms of all this conservative stuff I was getting on Sunday. But I always heard my dad complaining about teacher strikes. Like, that's the thing why I became a real school choice advocate. I always tell my mom this, and she doesn't say it. I'm like, is the fact that you guys went on strike when I was in the 11th grade, and we didn't start school till almost December that year. So you can, and that was one of the time when I just started getting into all kind of trouble, and it was because I had free time on my hands. Can you imagine having a summer break from June through October in your 11th grade year? You just start driving. It was just
you have a driver's license and you don't have to go to school.
It was an appetite for disaster,
Right.
My dad was, he wasn't, I wouldn't say he was against labor, but he was against certain things that in a city like Detroit that, in that instance, he was like, man, they should not be, the kids. And so that was, I had a split house. I could see both sides of issues, but it wasn't until I started, investing in stuff and learned about capital gains, and like, oh man, like why does the government get to tax my money that I've probably already taxed it coming out of my income check? So then I go invest some money, and because I was, able to pick a good stock or whatever, some solid investments. Now you're telling me you're going to take that money too. So it started with that and gun rights, and being in Detroit. That was the final straw was when Governor Engler made Michigan a concealed carry. We could carry, open carry, and concealed carry state. And so once people were able to actually, before that, only people who had guns were the police and the criminals. And so. That was my final. I think that was the final thing. I was like, well, you know what? I'm a Republican, man. I know that sounds bad to some of you guys here. I voted for Bush in 2000. I want to say it was 2004. 2004. I voted for him both times, and I was like, you know what? I got accepted, man. I'm a Republican. The guys that I like more, the guys that I seem to agree with more were Republicans, and like I said, it wasn't one of these things. Like I didn't listen to Rush Limbaugh and all these kind of guys, so it wasn't this hardcore.
That's evident. That's evident that you did.
Yeah, I realized that. And look, when Obama became president, there was this what I would consider a demand for Black conservatives to speak up, and I think I kind of came up in the ranks during that time with social media and things of that. But I never was the guy. I remember getting invited to speak at Tea Party rallies, and I say, if you guys think I'm about to come in here and just dog out President Obama, I'm probably not the guy you want to do that. I'm going to encourage us to get active. I was always about calling your senators and making all the disturbances you could that way, but just going after President Obama about every little thing, And now I see that I wasn't wrong about that, because it's like I still remember how conservatives went crazy. The one time he went to Spain or something, and he had a presidential suite, and it was like, oh my God, Trump, Obama's gone out of town, and he's using.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, well, he's the president. He's supposed to get. That's why they call it a presidential suite. He should be allowed to do that for a day. And then now, my president, who I support. He's had a lot more leeway with his travel schedule and being at Mar-a-Lago and all these things. And so, to me, that showed to me that it was just folks didn't like the idea that it was Obama spending those tax dollars to go to, let's say, Spain or whatever. But no one cares about that now with Trump. And I didn't care about Obama doing it, and I didn't care about Trump.
Right.
I guess that's
right.
You got to be consistent if you're going to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got two different groups of people that are hypocrites about this, right? So one is they're mad. Okay, so one of it, they're mad because he's Black. Like, I mean, it is what it is. They're mad because it's a Black guy and he's out jet setting around, and they don't like that. On their dime. And he's not just a Black guy, but he's into hip hop culture. He's like, and if anything, I mean, they think he's
Black guy.
He's a cool Black guy. And I mean, again, I think, give it another 20, 30 years and see who gets elected then and see how they respond to that. But I think Obama was pretty milquetoast compared to some of the other people that are going to be president in the future. But
he's going to be considered pretty conservative. He'll be a moderate. I mean, they're already branded Biden as moderate Democrats, and I think that's interesting how quickly that's become the labeling of those guys.
Oh, absolutely. So you've got that group that's mad because it was a Black guy, and then you've got a group of people that are just mad because it's a Democrat. If it were Biden doing it, they'd be outraged. If it was President Herman Cain doing it, they'd be fine with it. Like, it's just a pure team sports, like you and Antoine going back and forth
tribal.
about. It's very, very tribal team sports type stuff. So speaking of which, so that brings us into, I guess in 2013, you got involved with the Michigan Republican Party, doing, what was your title? You were the strategic director for African American engagement. How did that come about?
Well, that, interestingly enough, that came about with the Growth and Opportunity Program that Chairman Priebus at the time, Reince Priebus, and it was addressing, after the 2012 election, how badly and how soundly that President Obama beat Mitt Romney. Right. And from just the data and the numbers, the lack of votes and participation we were getting from minority communities. Now, Latinos in particular vote more conservative than Black folks do. So they put more emphasis on retaining Latino voters. But the idea was that he wanted to go into different communities and put in what they called a year-round effort. It wasn't just going to be, typically how they do in election cycles, we'll go get an office in September, October, and work through those couple months until the election.
Right.
But we can't, they hired me a year before the next election. So I was working a good year and a half. They actually invested in an office in the city of Detroit, which was, at that time, it was historical. Like we hadn't had an office in the city of Detroit in probably, let's say, 20 plus years.
Right.
We're talking about a consistent place where, people can come and get involved to party, volunteer, become delegates. We, our office opening was like national news. We had Rand Paul who came in and opened the office with us. So
right.
it was really, at that time, the commitment and the things that were being done were really unbelievable. It was great. And I was very grateful for Chairman Priebus and also Bobby Shostak, who was the Michigan GOP chairman that I would consider his full support and blessing to go out and try to bring in more people, Black people from my community, young people. It wasn't, and like I said, in Detroit, it's a melting pot of people. You're just looking for people outside of just being older white folks that you want to get involved in the party. And so that to me was that was a challenge. And we did well in 2014. We won our governor's race, won our attorney general race, and there were some incremental numbers that they went up. But the fact is that they did go up, and really it just shows that the more time you spend in these communities, you have a better chance. And a lot of what I was doing was encouraging, the different campaigns to come into our office, to go to these different churches, go to these different, NAACP meetings, do whatever you need to do to, have these discussions, because in my opinion, a lot of times Republicans and Democrats, they create silos of the people they want to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
Say the same message to them. These people already believe in them, already going to vote for them.
Right.
So, but that makes the candidate feel good. That makes him feel good to go to these places, and everyone there likes him. No one's challenging anything he's saying or doing. Right. And for me, getting the Republican candidates out of that comfort zone was part of what I wanted to do. I just think that a lot of times our Republican candidates are great candidates, good people. But they're not, we don't push them to go to a Black radio station host and go talk to them about, issues that are involved in the community. And it's not that they don't care or not even that they're not familiar with some of it. It's just that if you're a Republican candidate, you're going to go to these news media sources. And if you're a Democrat, you go to these folks. And what it does is that you end up just talking to the same people that were supporting you in the first place.
Right. And I mean, it's fine to have a pep rally if you already have enough votes to win. If you don't, then it's not pep rally time. You've got to reach out to someone that's not traditionally going to listen. And now, so Trump won in Michigan in 2016 by a pretty short margin. So I would assume that if it wasn't the deciding factor, it was at least an important factor, having more engagement in areas of Michigan that you wouldn't traditionally have.
He came to the city of Detroit. He came to a church in Detroit.
Yeah. No, I remember.
That was to me, that was the moment where I said, you know what? I don't have to agree or like everything he says it does. The fact that he's doing something that I couldn't get Mitt Romney to do in 2012, couldn't get other candidates to do, which is, hey, look, you'd be surprised if you come here. They're not going to boo you out the building. People are going to, be respectful. Yeah. And a lot of times that's all, to me, my biggest thing is that's what Black voters want. They want to be respected. They want you to come and be honest with them, have a discussion, and people just have to be comfortable with that. And that's been part of my job, is to help different candidates and my clients to be comfortable with that, and also just create a culture of where we shouldn't expect to not do it. That to me has been one of the biggest things that I think I've been able to do, is just say, look, these are some of the places we need to go. We can plan it out so we can be more comfortable with it, but we just need to do it. And to me, that's important.
Well, there was something you said one time, and by the way, before I go any further, something I really respect, guys, about Wayne, because I'm an anarchist. So I mean, he's a Republican. I'm an anarchist. So I mean,
total anarchy.
Total anarchy. The best kind. But the thing I respect the most about Wayne is that even when he was an employee of the Republican Party, like literally he got a paycheck from the Republican Party, he still was did not hesitate to call out things that he disagreed with among Republicans or things he agreed with among Democrats or non-affiliateds or whatever. He's always been as independent a voice, more independent of a voice than you would expect from someone who was actually an employee of the party, and that hasn't changed since he's moved on to do his own thing. Oh, when he's gotten, we're going to talk about that. He's definitely gotten, there have been all sorts of rewards he's gotten for that. So I just want to point that out before we go any further.
That was a constant issue at times.
At times, yes.
Being an independent voice and not. And when I look back, I'm very grateful for those people that allowed me to stay in the job at times when it could have been, just as simple as say, you know what, it's not worth having Wayne here because we got to deal with, these scenarios where literally where I had people, new national news calling my job because of a Facebook post. But that was my thing. It was a Facebook post. I wasn't really trying to, my personal time on the weekend. I wasn't at work doing that, but that.
And you know what? So I'm never going to vote Republican because I'm an anarchist. But if I were a fence sitter and I'm seeing someone who is being an independent voice and saying, I think you should vote Republican, but I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. I like that this Democrat did this. I think Obama's cool. I have a crush on Kamala Harris. Like all these different things. That's going to actually make me more like. I'm going to be more likely to receive something you said. I
tried to.
Well, I'd say. I mean, again, I don't like either party, and I think you've done a good job with it.
I tried to.
Yeah. So something you have said, something you said one time is that for Black voters, the Democratic Party takes for granted that they're going to vote for them, and the Republican Party takes for granted that they're not going to vote for them. So you have this situation where no one really gives a crap what the average Black voter has to say because they just assume they've already got your vote to begin with the exception of if it's a really close election, here come Democrat politicians to talk about hot sauce and or during the primaries, they'll be really happy. Yeah.
They're doing all the things. And that's left us with no political leverage.
Right.
I mean, when you really look at the situation, that's where we're at. I mean, the fact right now, like when you look what's going on in Virginia, Black folks have no other choice. They don't have a Black delegation in the Republican Party that can say, "Hey, that's not acceptable." And
he has to go. Right.
He has to go. But because we're all in one party, and the way they did that in Virginia, I'm gonna tell you what's even worse is that after he got his blackface allegations, they went after the Black dude that was the lieutenant governor to make him even a worse candidate to be governor. And so now they're like, well, we might as well just keep Northam in here. And I've heard Black folks say, Democrats down there say, well, now we're going to get some stuff done. It's almost like they got a gun to his head because of the blackface incident. So they're using their leverage that way. But I just think that in general, we're left with very little leverage to get politicians to work on our behalf because of that reason. Democrats feel like, hey, Black folks, the only thing that can stop Democrats is if Black folks don't come out to vote. And that's just essentially in their mind frame, as long as we can make them feel like it's worth coming out to vote, that's all we need to do. We're not about to give them, they're not going to give, an agenda or anything like that. They might show up at the church on a Sunday, come to some high school football games, do a couple of events. But in terms of, really having an agenda that's set, they don't have to do that because they know that Black people are going to vote for them anyway, which is unfortunate.
Right. Yeah, they're not pushing the needle at all. So now you are in you started American Urban Strategies, and what exactly? And I have a bunch of stuff that's going to kind of come off of that, but I just want to start off. What's the type of stuff that you're doing with American Urban Strategies?
For the most part, political consulting with candidates, and now I'm beginning to do a little bit more work with businesses and organizations that kind of want to improve their relationships within government, in particular here in the state of Michigan. But I'm not a lobbyist.
You're just a consultant.
Yeah, just a consultant. I don't
just a consultant. You don't
anything like that. But for the most part, and like in particular, like right now we have the emerging medical marijuana markets here in Michigan. So I'm working with some folks in that space. But for the most part, working with trying to help candidates, help organizations with their messaging and do a better job, still working within these communities.
So pretty much the same thing, but now as a freelancer.
Yeah, I have a little more freedom, and then I can, if I want to criticize someone, it doesn't have to be Wayne Bradley from the Michigan Republican Party. It's criticizing someone, and now that's the whole point. Now, if I criticize someone, it doesn't make the news. No one cares about it.
It's not a controversy, right?
Yeah, because it's not like I said, even that the thing that made the most news was something I'm like, well, one, I never even mentioned Trump. I didn't agree with Sheriff Pio or Preo being pardoned, but at the same time, I recognize as the president, he can do whatever he wants to do. But
that
doesn't mean that I have to. I mean, again, I support Trump, but I don't have to support Sheriff Prio. That wasn't part of the deal. So, great. Trump released, he pardoned him, but I still don't think that Sheriff Prio is anybody that should be a hero. And I stood by that. And then the other part was about, the monuments, all the different Confederate monuments. Well, dude, I live in Michigan. One, that's not even really an issue to me here because I obviously see it, but I don't think that in states where public tax dollars were being used, that that's a worthy cause. And if certain states want to keep it that way, that's their prerogative. But I just, again, I didn't know how that made
That's your opinion. Yeah, that's your opinion on it.
It was another one of my friends, and it was the guy that criticized me the most was somebody that I had known who who had his own questionable past, but at the end of the day, I wasn't willing to. That wasn't the point. Like I don't unfriend people on Facebook because of stuff. I don't do any of that stuff. So, and me and him eventually we pieced it out or whatever. But he was calling for me to be fired because I didn't stand 100% with the president. I'm like, no, I do stand with the president. I don't stand with these guys. I don't stand with Charlottesville, and So while the president has to say they're very nice people on both sides, I don't have to say that. That's not my base. That's his base. And if
there are nice Nazis out there, right?
Yeah, I mean that he has the right to say that.
Right.
I personally don't have to roll with that. That's
of course.
That's much. And so eventually, I'm very grateful for that. The Michigan GOP, and like I said, even when I was working for RNC, they gave me a little more space to be who I am, because that's me being who I am, like you said, might bring more people in as opposed to me just going along with every single talking point that the party, it was certain things I remember getting communications like, no, I can't say that. I just, I'm not going to, I just don't say anything, or can I change this and change this just a little bit, just so it sounds more like something I would actually say.
Something you'd actually say. You're in Detroit. It's like, what, 98% Democrat or some like, I mean, you can't do an outreach thing where you literally just say what, the standard talking point would be in, in rural Arkansas or, a suburb of San Diego or something. And you're going to bring that to downtown Detroit. You're going to, just say the same thing, but in your voice. That's not going to catch on. It's not that they're just waiting to hear a Republican say something. They're trying to hear how this is going to help them. And if you go to them and go, well, yeah, Dixie Pride, I mean, that's not going to carry over. And first of all,
I used to spend those meetings. I said, there's no way I can reach out to black folks if I'm cool with, the idea
Confederate monuments. Like, I mean, it's just absurd that they even asked you. First of all, the irony of, I'm always told, the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln and the Democrats are the party of the Confederacy. But also we have to fight to keep up the Confederate statues that the Democrats are trying to take.
And that's what I kept saying. Like, I'm a Republican. We beat the Confederates. I mean, that's what the whole, like, I should be proud to say tear them all down. So, but again, I think the conversation changed with the way that, I think the president at times, he likes to just start an argument. I mean, I cannot believe the guy that's from New York, that was, amongst the most liberal of people, really gives a crap at all about Confederate monuments. You know what I mean? I don't think he did, but I think that he realizes that there are certain people that were some of his supporters that was important to them. So if it's important to them, it's important to me, or at least to the point that's how he presented it. And so, Donald Trump has always been a great marketer and a salesman. So I mean, he understands his market better than anybody else. I give him credit for that.
He definitely does. We've talked about that. Like, so he's not someone people will say to me like, well, do you think Donald Trump is smart or dumb? And I'm like, listen, Donald Trump isn't someone that's going to want to sit down with you and talk political theory or, talk about philosophy and stuff like that. But he has an innate understanding that possibly no one else I've ever seen of how people are going to react to every single thing he does. Not just the people that like him. Yeah.
He has a hand on the pulse of like, I still have not figured out how, as a billionaire, he's tapped into the mind frame of a guy that's in rural Alabama, and he's talking the same language. I get it now, but that is one, he's that talent. That's a skill that most people just don't have.
And more importantly, he knows how the people that hate him are going to respond. So he can literally, they'll be sitting there going, we can't let the president dictate the agenda. We can't let him, and he'll tweet some stupid thing and they'll talk about it for 10 days straight. It's like they just
he knows how to play the media. He knows how to, and that, I mean, it's almost sometimes, there's been a couple times where I said something that was happening might have been controversial with the administration.
Right.
He's about to send out a tweet, he's about to do something, and the media goes for it every time. So I mean,
every single time.
He's learned that from the years of doing, reality TV, and just being a fixture, what I would consider in pop culture. If you really think about it, he's been involved in pop culture for 25, 30 years, if not more, probably longer than that.
I think even longer than that, because
you go back to the 80s, really. If you really go back to
early to mid 80s. He's been around for over 30 years now.
I mean, he's been doing Pizza Hut commercials. He's done a lot of, he's been in the mainstream of America here, and so let me tell my young daughter who just walked in to turn down.
Do whatever you need to do. That's fine. That's fine.
Real quick.
That's fine. I'm gonna go through real quick while you're doing that. But so guys, if you're watching, if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to comment, and Wayne and I will tell you if you're right or wrong. If you're just tuning in, I am interviewing Wade Bradley. He is a conservative political consultant and the head of the American Urban Strategies. And you're back. Good.
I'm back.
So I wanted to ask you about this. So there's something that's been going around for over a year now, this Blexit thing. And it's a play on you know what it is, but for those who don't know, it's a play on the Brexit thing. And it's basically saying that black people should exit the Democratic Party, presumably to become Republicans.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of, so honestly, I would say that 80% of the people that do the Blexit hashtag are people that already were Republican. They may have left, but it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. There have been some that are like, after this, I just became a Republican or I just left the Democratic Party. So there is some of that too. My question for you is, I noticed that the people that are the most likely to identify with Blexit aren't necessarily conservative, and they aren't necessarily, I guess so they aren't concerned about necessarily lower tax rates, or they may be concerned for medical marijuana or something like that, but so would a Democrat. It's like, so their politics and their policies pretty much stayed the same. They just now are kind of, they got the MAGA hat on instead of the Hope and Change shirt. So what are your thoughts on that? Because it seems like there's a level of identity politics there where they're like, well, I identify as a black person who recognizes that the Democratic Party has played us, but I haven't actually, I'm not a conservative Republican. I'm not even necessarily, I'm still, a liberal. I just am now a Republican liberal. What do you think are the challenges of that that are, people that are saying, well, I want to be a Republican, but I don't mind the government continuing to grow. I'm fine with you being taxed when your grandfather died, or whatever else. How do you deal with someone like that? What is the outreach for someone like that, who at least recognizes that the Democrats don't give a crap about them?
Well, I think there's a couple different layers to that. One, Candace Owens, whether you might like her or dislike her, she's done a great job in getting young people you know, at least disenfranchised from the Democrat Party. I think some of that has been self-inflicted by Democrats. I think the whole thing with Bernie and Hillary Clinton, that kind of made some younger black people be more like hands off the Democrats Party. But I think, you know, overall, I support anything that makes black, in particular, black voters, whether it's independent of either party, but at least think for yourself in terms of what you know. So I approve of the idea of it. I think that, you know, what the fact is, Candace Owens has become a media sensation, a personality too. So what happens is people follow the personality, and they're not, you know, I didn't, you know, and I guess in a way I was like that with Jack Kemp, but at the same time, it was certain principles and you know, principles that I started aligning myself to and understand. Those are the things that really made me want to be a Republican. And so now, again, you know, with social media, I didn't have all that back then. Right, of course. You know, people connect with people and they receive information differently. So I think it's good that you have someone that's, I think Candace is about 27, 28 years old. So you have, you know, it's funny, I've been involved with it so long now that I feel like I'm one of the older, the older generation of it. I'm 42. But and I think there's a different, you know, I think that her methods, I never was the confrontational guy. You see what I mean? Like, so I think that her methods are different than mine, but she's on a bigger platform, a bigger scale. And so to get MSNBC and the CNNs to always want to interview you, you have to be somewhat controversial. I think. Oh yeah, you have
to be a fighter. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's why you don't see me on TV and stuff as much, because that I'm more about the solutions. And so, like, if I'm going to recruit people to leave the Democrat Party, I want to have something for them to come to, right? To do that, and I think that they're working on that. And like I said, I've spoke to Candace Owens a few times. I think that in general, I support it because I like the idea of people challenging political norms, societal norms on these kind of things. So right. In theory, I'm definitely behind. I think that the challenge is that, again, when you're going into personalities, what happens if you know, Donald Trump, whenever he decides he doesn't want to be president anymore, or if he doesn't run again, or whatever the scenario is, are they there for a personality, or are they there for the principles? And will that, you know, because I wonder about that. What happens if I was a Republican before, so it doesn't, you know, to me, if it had been Ted Cruz, I'd have been supporting that Republican candidate. Right. People that are exclusively only into it because of Donald Trump, you know, I don't know where that, you know, how far does that go, or does maybe one of his kids run and then you can continue that legacy? I don't know. Where that
Trump's for the next 30 years. Yeah,
it's possible. I mean, it might not all be presidents, but they could all be senators and different things. So I mean, you just never know. But I'm in theory, I like Brexit. I like with Candace Owens. Certain stuff, you know, again, I'm not into to being what I consider, and it's hard to recognize that with my Facebook posts sometimes, but I'm really not the person that likes to just argue with people on, you know, TV and radio all the time. If people disagree with me, I'd rather them say why they disagree with me than just call me an idiot. So let's have that conversation. You know, that's right. So
you don't want to just yell at Democrats all day, which it's cathartic. It's cathartic. Yeah. Yelling at Democrats can lower your blood pressure, but it's not a strategy. I mean, especially when you consider that Donald Trump isn't really even all that conservative. He's somewhat of a centrist, maybe to the right of center. He's somewhat right on some things, but when he goes, and it was the same thing with Obama. When Obama left, and everyone's like, and the Democrats are like, vote for Hillary, and everyone's like, why? And then Donald Trump's like, vote Donald, you know? Right, exactly. And Donald Trump says, vote for me, and they're like, all right, okay. I mean, I've met a lot of people that are like, yeah, I voted for Obama because he was cool, and I voted for Trump because he sounded like he had the, you know, he was the biggest fighter. And it's like, you know, they don't have politics. It's like, I voted for this one because I heard about him or her the most. So yeah, what are you gonna when Trump's gone and now it's,
you don't want to, as much as these polls and all this other stuff and the numbers of it, it really does come down to who people, a lot of people, it's about a feeling, who they like the most.
Oh yeah.
Who feel that represents not their policy issues, because most people, I don't think, I guarantee if you ask most voters, it's, you know, they don't have policy positions on most stuff. It's about who they think is gonna work the best for them, work for their agenda, whatever that might be, and so Obama, to most black people, he represented everything they thought that a black person could be, the whole inspirational. There's a lot of people that were older than my mother, my grandmother's age, that never thought they would be alive to see a black president. So, now I'm okay with this, because I think now, after 8 years of Obama, I think black candidates running for president and maybe anything else will be a little more scrutinized, because I think black people are now just coming to the realization that they didn't probably get everything they wanted out of the Obama administration, and they're still proud of them, to that extent, but they can be honest now that they probably didn't get everything they wanted. And that, that's the challenge that you have to deal with. Cory Booker's about to be dealing with that,
is dealing with that. Yeah.
He's dealing with it, very seriously. But, the thing about both of those guys, both of them, is that they actually have records before they ran for president. President Obama he was only in office for about 2 years. So he didn't have this record of being a prosecutor, which I think is the toughest
that's gonna be tough
to run for president. I just think in general, prosecutors are the people they're law enforcement, so they're enforcing laws. Most of the time, prosecutors, and attorney generals love to say, "I'm going to enforce the law. I'm going to be tough on crime." And so now, now criminal justice reform is getting popular because even Republicans have figured out it's a waste of money.
Oh, it's a huge waste of money.
So now, as we can remind people, it was, Bill Clinton who, made the criminal justice law so tough, but it was because black people were saying, like, you got to lock up these gangbangers. You got to lock up these people, these drugs. They're killing the crack epidemic was destroyed. So the only thing they could think of was to lock these guys up, not realizing that, okay, now you're leaving a whole generation of kids without fathers. And so that's created a whole nother generation of, fatherless young men that are out here, doing the best they can do, and some of them not doing the best they can do. But locking people up for 30 to 40 years for something that maybe they were making even $100,000 a year. Let's say if they were a successful drug dealer,
right?
We spend more money keeping them locked up now than we have, and the community is not any more safe. So.
Oh, and the whole thing's foolish. So, if you made hugs illegal, if we said hugging is going to be illegal from now on, you would see the cartels step in, and you'd see the absolute worst people step in to provide you with hugs, and they'd probably kidnap children and put them in vans, and you'd pay $50 to hug a kid because it's illegal to hug people. If you make something illegal,
cigarettes illegal again. If you made cigarettes illegal again, people wouldn't stop smoking cigarettes.
Exactly.
It would. Pack would go up to $20 a pack, and people would be coming in from all over the place. So I mean,
and people would be shooting each other in the streets over cigarettes. If you made, and again, when people say to me like, "Well,
each other over alcohol," I mean,
alcohol. The Kennedy family got rich, being the toughest gangsters out there. And when people say to me like, "Well, do you want heroin and crack to be legal?" and I'm like. And by the way, I'm not speaking on behalf of Wayne. I'm speaking on behalf of Spike Cohen. When they say, Michigan Republicans do not endorse this. When people say, do you want crack to be illegal? I'm like, yeah. I mean, listen, they're going to do it anyway. All you're doing is giving cartels, something powerful, another thing to make money off of. And then you're also locking up, and most in the U.S., if you make a new law, it's going to be disproportionately enforced against people of color, especially black people. So you're giving the government another thing to lock up a bunch of black people for. Like it's not a good thing. Again, Wayne does not support crack legalization. The Republican Party is a good 20 years away from supporting crack legalization.
We got a long way to go on that one. But I understand. Like I think that what you could do is stop criminalizing everything, and look how
at the very least, right?
It's a great example of how the difference of this is. We have treated opioid addiction as sickness, something that needs to be treated. We have not criminalized it. And I think that's kind of similar what we should do with all drug issues and drug problems, is that you have to, it's not a criminal issue, it's a sickness. And so
Right. Yeah. So if you're not going to make it legal like I want, then at the very least, stop putting people in cages over it. Like if you're going to treat it like something people should, make them go into rehab and things like that. Don't put them in a cage and give them a criminal record that makes it nearly impossible for them to get a good job. Not to mention taking them out of the world for, there are days where, because I have MS, and so I have these times where I get really, really tired and I just sleep for 2 or 3 days. And when I get up, I'm like, what happened? Where am I? What is and I'm so like detached from the world after 2 or 3 days. 10 years, 20 years, you come out, the world doesn't even look like it did when you went in. And you spend the first year probably just adjusting to that lifestyle again. And you've got, people don't want to hire you and all that stuff. So it's absolutely terrible. So Wayne, you've been listening to me say anarchist stuff now for roughly, 3-4 years, and yet you're still not an anarchist. Why?
Well, I think on a unfortunately, in this day and time, I think that I guess it's just something. It's the unknown. I guess I'm scared, Spike. I guess I gotta be honest. I don't know how that would work out in America with no laws and total anarchy. I'm a little scared of that here. Maybe if it was maybe we ought to test it on some smaller villages or
smaller areas.
And see how that works, because I can imagine in certain places that might actually work with a less effective government. But I'm just not convinced that in Detroit, where I live, that if tomorrow we just said, you know what, we're going to let everyone police themselves. We're going to let, I just don't know how that would work, and that, I guess, like I said, I'm just going to have to be honest. I don't usually admit to being scared. But that's what it is. I guess I'm scared of the idea of literally saying, just let everyone police themselves and do what you do. If we legalize, there is a good argument for the drug legalization. I just think that, that just like everything else, I have an issue of where will they put that stuff? Where will the product placement of those, just the same way it is illegally. I just have an issue of where would the product placement be of this stuff?
Right above the rocket launchers. Listen, listen. So I want to give you credit again. So you are my, I believe, 30th guest. And I would say 20 of them were not anarchists. And I always ask, like, so why aren't you an anarchist yet? You've heard me say it's good. Why? And I've gotten all sorts of different answers. You were the only one to be honest enough to just be like, listen, I'm scared. I listen to what you have to say, and it scares me. And so I will give you credit on that, sir. I appreciate your honesty there, because everyone else like, well, and
libertarian streak in me, man. I was a Rand Paul.
Hold on, I'm having a crap. Yeah, no, this is.
You got segue and break music, huh?
Sorry, that was me pressing the wrong button. I apologize, everyone. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, I was a Rand Paul guy, so and what Rand Paul has shown me over the last 2 years, since Trump has been elected, is that he still clings to his liberty stuff. But he knows how to unfortunately, he's learned that, it's going to come small bites at a time for the kind of liberty he wants. So I still have
much less the kind I want, because if liberty,
with the wars, I want to get everybody out, but I just don't want to do it all tomorrow. I realize we can't just, realistically, I know it sounds good to say those aren't our wars, but you know what? If we left tomorrow, there would be some very bad things that would happen, and I guess the argument can be made, well, those bad things were going to happen anyway. Well, you know what? We probably didn't help those things. We've made situations worse.
Way worse. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, realistically, can we leave at? You're going to be in Afghanistan probably for the rest of our lives, Spike. I mean,
that's why you have to legalize the grenade launchers. Listen, I'm just real quick. So no, I know, because I get what you're saying, because yes, the U.S. government has turned entire sections of the earth into an incredibly dangerous place. Where if you look at like what Afghanistan looked like in the 1950s and 60s, if you look at what Lebanon looked like in the 60s, if you look at what Iran looked like in the 50s and 60s, those places looked like European cities with brown people in them. Yeah, yeah, they look like they were on vacation. They were wearing bikinis and everything else. They would, and it's a beautiful, like the climate's great there. I mean, it's an ideal place to live, except because there's oil there and because there's Israel there. The U.S. government has done some stuff that wasn't necessarily the best, and so did the Soviet government and other. We're not the only one.
Yeah, we have strategic alliances and interest over there, I guess is the best.
Have some very interesting interests that have led to entire sections of the earth being war zones. And so again, but this is why if you legalize the grenade launchers, they can buy them from us. And then they can fight each other. It's a good thing. This is a good thing. But anyway,
we definitely give them grenade launchers and guns to fight each other. But sometimes those guns end up getting switched on us. And I mean, that's the problem of being there in the first place. If you're not,
exactly. Yeah.
But there's poppy fields over there too, Spike. You forgot about those poppy fields over there.
That's why you got to legalize it. You got to legalize it.
You can make an argument on that because we're definitely over there protecting oil and poppy fields.
Oh yeah, when people tell me the government, so I'm like, listen, the government. I mean, you've heard me say this before, and I know you agree. It's hard for me to take the government seriously. I'm sorry, I have back problems. It's hard for me to take the government seriously when they say, yeah, we're really worried about this drug problem, and I'm like, well, then why is the U.S. military defending poppy fields, and why does the CIA? Why does the CIA? Yeah, why? If not burn it down, why are you stopping the Taliban from burning it down? Because there was no heroin trade while the Taliban was in charge. No, they didn't allow it. And the reason that opiates are as cheap as they are now, that's what's causing this whole crisis, is that opiates are cheaper than alcohol, is because there's this huge flood of supply coming in from Afghanistan, which is being brought in by CIA-protected drug cartels, but then you want to arrest the black guy that's selling it. And it's like, so when did you start caring about the war on drugs? Clearly not until an American citizen was involved, and now you got to throw him in a cage. So anyway,
it's too many people are going to jail for. I mean, I think that if you even lock people up for 5 years or so for major drug dealers, not these guys, these nickel and dime guys, but if you took away all their money,
right?
Yeah, and maybe that was set examples, but the reality is that there's a new kingpin the next day. The next day you lock up this one guy, there might be 5 other guys that are willing to go to war to be that next kingpin. So
exactly. And you've got people that are in economically depressed areas. They have not been, in many cases, they have not seen legal success. Their cities are heavily taxed and heavily regulated, so it's hard to open a business there. There is all sorts of structural things in place to make sure that they don't succeed legally, and then they can be making $2,000 a day selling crack or heroin.
And let's not get in, and crack and heroin is so 1990 Spike. Let's talk really about what's going on now with these pills that doctors are prescribing. That are made right here in the good old USA,
right?
In factories across America. That is the real problem why heroin has gone up is because people have gotten addicted to these man-made pills, and then when they run out of the prescription, they have to go to the street and get heroin. And that's exploded the whole, because once you get addicted to heroin, it's over. You can play around with pain pills for I guess a longer amount of time, but once you get hooked on heroin or any of that kind of stuff, you're done. And so
because you're snorting it or injecting it into your veins. It's pure opiate. It's on a completely different level. And there's so legal opiates have a certain amount of other chemicals in it that make it so that you can't really overdose on it because it'll make you sick and throw up. There's nothing like that in heroin. Heroin, you can do as much until you die. So
people aren't ODing on the pills. They're ODing on the heroin after they run out of the pills, and no one can get the prescription filled quick enough. So
exactly.
I think that, and again, but we're treating that like sickness. We're not treating that the same way we're doing crackheads, which is, again, you call someone a crackhead, that automatically takes them down a level in the kind of person describing as opposed to someone who's got opioid addiction.
You're right. We treat it like a complete. One is a mental health issue or an addiction issue, and the other one is, I grew up in, like you said, I'm dating myself talking about crack because I grew up in the 90s and stuff.
We're about the same age on that, I figure. So
I'm almost 40, and so I go to Poplar and Atlantic Beach and the places around here, and it was the crackheads. And you don't want to be around the crackheads because you can't trust a crackhead. Crackhead, they might be the nicest crackhead in the world, but they'll still steal from you or whatever. But then with an opioid people, it's like, well, we just need to get them the help that they deserve. And it's like, wait, but they're like the crackheads. So anyway, so I would like to talk about possibly your favorite. Actually, let me start with this. And we kind of touched on this. If you ever want to be entertained, go to Wayne's Facebook. I have it in the notes, and just see when he posts anything, even just a new profile picture, literally anything. And you will see the most entertaining comment thread, bar none. I don't care. I have some very entertaining Facebook friends, but you have a mixture of partisan white Republicans, partisan black Republicans. You got a Jewish anarchist in there for some reason. I don't know why. And then you've got liberty-leaning Republicans, and then you've got black Democrats and white Democrats, and you've got pretty much the whole spectrum of you got everyone.
I have a picture of what America really looks like in terms of
you really do, and they hate each other. That's what's so funny. So you have,
and they love doing it. They love going at it every day.
Oh, every day they love it.
I mean, literally, some of these guys they hate each other, but they love talking to each other. And I think that really, to me, that's what America's about. That we should be able to argue and debate, but it's like it's not one of these things where I think that most of the people I get the impression that they wouldn't come to blows or violence if they saw each other. It's just good political banter.
I've had people that I've met who online they've blocked me and called me a Nazi and whatever else, and I meet them in person, and we're nice to each other. Like it's not, and I'm sort of online the same way I am in person because I'm like, as soon as someone gets angry at me, I'm like, that's funny, and I'm the same way in person. Like if I don't argue well with my wife because I have a hard time staying arguing.
Yeah, me too. I'm not an arguer by nature. I'm a smooth talker. I'm a lover, not a fighter, man.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm a clown, and I'm a clown, not a fighter. But I guess I'm a lover. But yeah. So
you are, man. You're the man, Spike.
I do what I can. I appreciate it.
Dance moves. You got all.
I do have that. That's true. You're right. I'm a lover. I'm a Latin lover, the Jewish Latin lover. But so yeah. So you deal with hate from both sides and stay consistent. And again, that's what I like about. And you know me. I come on and defend you constantly when people are like, "Oh, you're just saying that because that's what Trump likes or whatever." And I'm like, did I lose you? Are you there?
There.
Oh, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, I lost you for a second. Yeah, I defend you constantly when people are like, "Oh, you just say that because that's what Trump thinks," and I'm like, "No, he really doesn't." But so I want to talk about what might be your favorite subject, your kryptonite possibly, Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And by the way, I want to give you credit again. I thought when she announced she was running, I'm like, here we go. Wayne is going to switch parties. He's going to nominate. He's going to endorse her. And he's going to go around and say he's going to retract everything he said. I'm like, this is not going to end well. And you've been doing a good job. I've been very proud of you. You have stuck to being a Republican that is trying to keep Trump in office. I've been very proud of your sticking with.
My heart is with Kamala, but my head is with Trump. I know. Where...
Exactly right.
And let's just be honest. I do have an affection for Kamala Harris.
No yeah, we know. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and she's an intelligent woman, but I think from the two things, or really the things that scare me the most, is she's a gun grabber. She would definitely go after the guns if she was president. And her record as a prosecutor scares me. But like I said earlier, I know that that's a rough position to be in politics. But it's hard for me to believe that some of the stuff she was doing, dealing with poor black families in California as an attorney general, that now that she's running for president, to me, it just sounds like, just like Cory Booker, they'll do whatever is expedient at the time. And so, yeah, I do agree that she probably right now would be favorable for criminal justice reform, but her background just doesn't show me that that was important at any other time before that.
She locked up mostly black people.
Yep.
For their kids being
black and brown.
But she locked up black people for their kids being truant, and she pushed for that as a policy. I mean, so it's one thing to say, oh, well, I was, I'm just doing like what they do with the cops. I'm just doing my job. Well, you don't have to do that. No one's making you do that, but that's a whole other subject.
She was way past doing her job.
She was way past doing her job. She was pushing for stuff that led to, I mean, the correctional unions love her because her policies would lead to ever-growing prison. She can say she's in favor of, ending bail or sentencing reform or whatever, but her record is one of doggedly jailing and putting people in rape cages over victimless crimes.
She was more conservative about that than her Republican candidate was in her attorney general or Senate race.
Easily.
I mean, so to me, that if you're voting for her because you think that she's a black woman and she went to an HBCU and she's an AK and all these different things, that's great. But let's just look what she did when she had an opportunity the first time,
right?
Being a power, that's the part I have an issue with. Cory Booker, he's been known as being an opportunist, so I think I just accept that out of him. I don't expect anything different, to watch that man go after that lieutenant governor and ask him to resign, but before anybody else does. Now again, he's opportunist, and I just think that any black man that's running for office that would do that, Kamala might be a little more desirable just based on that. The fact that he was demanding that the brother had to step down, and he, the allegations, they are bad allegations, but can we at least look through the whatever notes or whatever she might have done at the time before we just call for the man, and this is a Democrat. I don't care if he resigns or not. It really doesn't matter to me, but I don't like setting this precedent the same way it was with Kavanaugh. I didn't think that Kavanaugh was, I wasn't like this big Kavanaugh fan. I'm like, wait a minute. So this woman who doesn't remember anything can just say that this happened and we're just all supposed to believe that. I was like, that's a slippery slope. And as a man, and in particular as a black man, I don't want to set that as the precedent that you can just get rid of people for not, I always go back to Herman Cain. All it took was allegations, and Herman Cain was out of the election.
Right.
I mean, that's all you have to do essentially with black men candidates is to put some kind of sexual innuendo in it, and now all of a sudden, Northam is actually saying he's not going to resign because you don't want me to resign because this guy.
Because then Lexington will get in, or if not Lexington, Fairfax will get in. Yeah.
I think that it's just a slippery slope. I was talking with a former CEO today, a black female. She's like, "This is right now. This is women's time," and so in terms of these kind of allegations and the workplace behavior that might have been okay 10, 15 years ago, is not acceptable anymore. And, again, if he really did rape those women, then he shouldn't, he should not be elected to be governor. But
right, because he's being accused of rape, not like sexual harassment or something. Like he's being accused of straight up rape. Right.
Yeah, that's totally, But if she went and talked to the people at Duke, because she claims that she went and actually talked to one of the counselors or something at Duke, then there should be some kind of paperwork to that. Now, maybe the counselor talked her out of going further with it, but there should be something there. And she says she's told her friends and things of this nature. But, and people, because oh, you got daughters. Well, I've made points of all these things to tell my daughter, it's in particular my oldest daughter, that these are learning experiences that, that there are going to be people that question you if you're not upfront and honest about things in the beginning. And so,
oh yeah, absolutely.
And so
for anything, not just rape, if something happens to you,
right?
If you assaulted me and I wait 20 years to tell someone that Wayne hit me and beat me up, all right, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. Yeah, like unless you have proof. Yeah.
Yeah, and see with a situation like with rape, I think that you just can't throw that out there because she just said she didn't expect any charges to be brought. She didn't expect anything, but she just didn't want to be elected governor. Well, that sounds pretty scornful right there.
Why wouldn't you want something to happen to him? Like if he raped you, why wouldn't you want him to not be able to rape anyone else?
Yeah, and so that to me, just the same way with that woman that accused Kavanaugh. It's like, well, now that he's been elected to the Supreme Court, this is an issue now.
Right.
you know, and that to me, again, it's a serious issue, but you have to, you know, deal with it in a way that so that people will, you know, deal with it that way. You know, telling someone 20 years later, it does come off as something, you know, even with that Roy Moore stuff. I didn't like it. I didn't like Roy Moore as an individual, so I didn't have any problem with them going after him. But I said, nah, wait a minute now. But you see, the difference was with him, they weren't saying he raping people. He was just trying to holler at young girls in a time when in Alabama, maybe that's, and even, you know, that might be acceptable culturally down there, but they weren't saying he was raping women. I think that was,
no, they were
candidate in general. So I didn't have any qualms about that, but it seems to me that the easiest way to weaponize these allegations is what they're doing. They're weaponizing it just by making the allegation and no burden of proof, no anything, expecting a man to defend himself. And the more you fight it and try to defend yourself, the worse you look. You know, Brett Kavanaugh proved that.
Yeah, well, it's tough. Like, I mean, if something happens to you, it's imperative that you say something as soon as possible so that the person can be punished for it. If you come back years later and don't have proof, then this is the kind of stuff that happens. So you've got Kamala Harris, who is ahead of her time. She listened to Tupac 7 years before he ever came out, and Snoop Dogg 10 years before he came out, and then Cory Booker. Who he and his friend T-Bone, the drug dealer, T-Bone, and he apparently now has a girlfriend that no one knows. I think her name's probably T-Boniqua, but she, you know, T-Boniqua or something.
He was rumored to be dating this actress Dawson. What's her Rosario Dawson? Now she's fine, but I don't know if that's really what he was. You know, again, I don't want to get into that too deep on those allegations, but.
His allegations of being heterosexual,
I find it and listen, he probably would gain points for being honest about who he is if he wants to be that way, but I think that more than anything, he's proven just to be an opportunist. If polling showed that if he came out and said whatever you wanted to make an announcement, if he saw that to be in his favor, I think he would do it. But
absolutely. Even if he wasn't gay, and they said, you know, if you pretend you're gay, this is gonna he'd be like, I'm gay. Like I can't stand.
If he saw it to be in his favor, he would do whatever he could do to win. God bless him, because I know people that have worked with him, you know, in New Jersey, whatnot. He, you know, and one of his biggest problems is that when he was mayor of Newark, it was one of the worst police departments in the country in terms of abusing black folks, abusing people's civil rights, and he was the mayor at that time. So again, these guys have records that you can really dive into and say, you know, I liked Cory Booker when he was mayor because he was a pro school choice at that time. Bet you won't do that now.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to do that now.
See, and that's the problem, is that when he was a mayor in a city that had failing school systems, he found it necessary to say, you know what, I might be in support of school choice because I want people to stay in Newark. And the best way to do that might be to bring some of these charter schools in here. And so he worked with a lot of different Republicans that I knew at the time that were pro, you know, school choice. Just the same way he's worked with Wall Street, and he's worked with Big Pharma and everything else. So he's an opportunist. He is the cookie cutter politician that will take advantage of any opportunity and never lets a tragedy go to waste either. So
and never misses a chance to pander. And again, I mean, to me, again, I'm an anarchist. When I see politicians, I'm like, how are you going to pander to me? But he takes it to a level of, he's in front of an audience and they asked him about the Ralph Northam blackface thing, which, by the way, and here's an aside, if you watch that thing where then he said, no, I was actually Michael Jackson, and they were like, well, can you moonwalk? And he was like, yeah, I can moonwalk. And he kind of looked over and he was like, yeah, I can do that here. And he got so excited because you put yourself in his head, in his place for a second. He's been beat up, raked across at coals for 2 days, and, you know, possibly not going to be governor anymore. And he's up in front of these angry journalists, and one of them's like, hey, can you moonwalk for us? And I bet he's really good at it, because he's like, because I know that feeling. So I'll say, like, I know how to salsa, and people will be like, hey, can you do it? And I'll be like, yeah, I can do that here. And I'm like, yeah, let me show these people I can do. And then he was ready to go, and then his wife's like, no, that's not appropriate. And he's like, my wife said that's not appropriate. I actually felt bad for the guy in that moment because I'm like, he should have. First of all, if he moonwalked well, that might have actually helped him. But
he
that's
could have said that
thing.
it was legit. You know, this was not a blackface thing. This is
not.
I had appreciation for the culture. I wanted to be like Mike at that time. If you
I
really
am a
wanted
Michael Jackson impersonator.
yeah, he didn't have. I mean, and that would have been better. You know, what I give him partial credit for is the lie that he came up with the next day. Right. If he would have came up with that a couple hours earlier Friday night, I think that he would have avoided a big portion of this. He could have just said, "That was not me. I don't know who that was in that picture, but it wasn't me. I can tell you what." And that and because it was funny the next day for him after already apologized to come in and say that.
That was so stupid.
You know, a lot of men use that excuse, and maybe he's going to be because now, like I said, black people are using it as leverage to get stuff that they probably would have never got done before.
Right.
And the fact that they've scared people away from Fairfax, who they thought was going to be for like 2 days.
Next governor. Yeah.
It was a 2-day window where they're like, we're going to have our second black governor in Virginia. And next thing you know, rape allegations. And then the next thing you know, private meetings leaked out where he was using F that B to describe the situation. I said, oh, he's done. His own staff is turning on him. And, you know, there's probably, you know, not to start a race war or nothing here, Spike, but I bet you most of his staff is a bunch of white folks and from Virginia. And you know, some white young woman heard that and was like, I'm leaking that. That's coming out. And so, and it could have been a black person. I'm not going to say that. I mean, the play was in. We got to get this guy out of here. You know,
or he might not have even said it. I mean, I have no idea if he even said it or not. You never know. But
the exact way that the term was used, he said it because that's how.
No one made that up.
Yeah, that's how you would feel if you're getting lied on.
That's a good point.
In the game. You know, I don't doubt that he didn't say it, and I probably would feel the same way if you know you didn't do that, and someone's trying to take you out of your, you know, something he's probably worked extremely hard to be in that position, for someone to lie, you know, to make that kind of, you know, again, it's not sexual harassment. I mean,
I mean, that was straight up a rape allegation. Yeah.
And then a second rape allegation, which again, and that woman actually involved former NBA star Corey Maggette into those allegations. So she's really digging deep here. I hope that, you know, between, you know, because everybody's been saying, believe the victim. Spike, you should have saw the day when I had the nerve to say, well, what's up with this guy, Jussie out in Chicago? I'm like, so wait a minute. It was some hillbilly white guys with mega hats on at 2 a.m.
2 a.m. in Chicago on the South Side.
That doesn't sound right. Just doesn't sound right. And I kept telling people, let's wait to get some more information. I've learned now over the years that
you have to wait.
That I'll get worked up on the issue. Like I stopped doing that because I realized, all right, now this, you know, my father was shot in the line of duty. So in my mind, I've trained not to go crazy every time there's a police shooting. I get that.
Right.
But like certain stuff, even with this Donald Trump stuff, like I knew that day, I was like, now if that really happened, that's bad. But you know, knowing that area, I talked to people like, and no videotapes. He wouldn't give up his phone. I'm like, doesn't sound right.
And these Donald Trump followers who are so racist and sexist that they're walking around with a bottle of bleach and a noose, which wouldn't stand out at all in Southside Chicago for two white people early
at 2 a.m. in the morning.
2 a.m. with a noose. That's definitely, and a MAGA hat. But at the same time, they were able to spot one of the stars of Empire. That, like, I mean, so
go figure. Like I said, I think that unfortunately you can put Trump's name and stuff with the media and everybody else, and it gets more clicks.
Oh, and they jump all over it. Yeah.
You know, it gets all the things that people want, and you know, the media has helped build Donald Trump to who he is. I mean, they, you know, good or bad. You know, Fox News has built him up one way, but MSNBC has built him up another way. But
absolutely,
CNN has built him up another way. But
Washington Post and all of them,
they've all built him up. And so they need him. They need him to do stuff. They need him to tweet. They need to have all these people come on. They can keep these ratings up. I mean, I don't think people have to be honest. No one has watched this much news since Donald Trump has come in office. I mean, he has definitely made the news, must-see TV, reality style TV. So, I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. And I mean, I think that, even with this Russia investigation, I think that, as today they just got, closer with Paul Manafort, I just don't see that there was collusion on campaign stuff. I think that it's fairly obvious that he might have had some real estate business that he was trying to get accomplished over in Russia up until the very probably end. I don't think he thought he was going to win as president, to be quite honest. And so he never stopped doing his real estate business. And, I think that that's something that people, he's going to have to do. Was it illegal? No. Was it unethical? Yeah, it could have been a little bit unethical, but there's a big difference between unethical and illegal. And I don't think that someone who worked on his campaign and saw how the Trump folks worked, I don't think that Russians were working with them to ensure him victory. I just don't think that's the scenario.
Well, and then was something illegal done, and then the next threshold is, are you going to get a 2/3 Senate majority and House majority to vote to impeach and then convict him on it when the Republicans are in charge? Or even if the Democrats are in charge, I don't, I think
Democrats that realize that they have to treat Trump a certain way. If they're in Arkansas, if they're in, certain states, Alabama, I guarantee you the senator that beat that Roy Moore guy, I guarantee he's not out here banging the drums for impeachment.
No, Doug Jones isn't going to, no. Because listen, no one has ever been, no president has ever been convicted in an impeachment. They've never been charged with a crime, and a lot of them have done some really bad stuff. And if Trump did, then he did too. I don't see a president being prosecuted for anything. I think people who think that's going to happen.
And Mueller knows that. I think that Mueller knows his best case scenario is to put out a report that can somehow make him look bad, but he's not going to indict the president. Now, his son and son-in-law and all those people, they're not immune from that. But if they haven't done anything,
he can pardon them.
If the worst thing they've done is lie to Congress or lie during the investigation, that's not enough that they're going to be able to show collusion. I think the worst thing he might have been trying to do was maybe do a real estate deal. That now we'll find out if that compromised him any more moving forward, but I don't think so. Right. I think that even Putin has to recognize that Trump is his own man. He might have played him for that deal, but Trump would play him right back. And one thing Trump will not allow anyone to do, in my opinion, because of his egos, he's not going to let people make him look bad. So as much as,
above all else, right?
Yeah, above all else. I don't care what deal he had with Putin. I don't care what happened. If any way he feels that Putin is making him look bad, then Putin becomes the enemy just like everybody else does in his world. So I've never believed in this thing where Putin's got something on him. If he's got something on him, what I believe is that it's nothing that can make Trump supporters leave Trump anyway.
That's the whole thing, and especially if so. I sidetracked this. I sidetracked this a little with the Michael Jackson thing, but Cory Booker gets thrown what I thought was a pretty big softball about Ralph Northam and the blackface, and how do we address that? And he starts giving this answer about we need to understand where white people are coming from on blackface, and I'm like.
That's a man trying to get elected to be president.
I'm like, but do you not know what the electorate of the Democratic Party for the primary looks like? It doesn't look like people that want to talk to white people about what they think about blackface, and including the white ones. Like, I mean, listen, I'm not even the
most vanilla, non-controversial answer, the most non-offensive answer that he can give everyone, which is, maybe we ought to think about what the white guy is doing with the blackface, know the history of it. Yada yada yada, and he's gonna be like, hey, I had white friends, and I mean he's a real politician from the old school of I don't want to offend anybody because everyone could vote for me. And,
I was waiting for him to say, well, the Wayans brothers did white chicks. Like I was just waiting for him to go full pander on.
He might take that line at some point, but see then as quickly as we're saying he had the moxie to pull that off. What does he do for Fairfax? Hey, brother, you need to resign.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. You know, like we can talk about Northam and figure out why he's, but you need to resign.
You got to go down, yeah, on an allegation that is unproven, as opposed to Northam, who basically admitted that he either dressed in a Klan outfit, or in not Michael Jackson. He didn't. It's one. So you and I may disagree with this. If I see a white person that's dressed up as their favorite black celebrity, I can see why some people would get offended by that, but I personally don't believe that is blackface, right? So, but what Northam was dressed up in was like, if he wasn't the Klan guy,
he was on some 19.
He was, straw hat and the plaid pants, like slave outfit with black, like shoe polish black, and the red lips, and I think he had the white gloves. Like, you were in black. Someone was in blackface.
That's black.
So
yeah, I mean, if
you're
trying to dress like Prince or Michael Jackson, I could see that. You know, I would advise my white friends not to do that.
Don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. But I can. It's not smart. It's not smart, and I could see why someone would get offended. But it's not. It's not true blackface.
Go with light skinned Michael. Don't do 1970s Michael. Do 1990s 2000 Michael. You might be okay.
Michael gave all white people an out to just be like, well, I'm light skinned Michael. And it's like, oh,
yeah, I mean, go with that one, baby. I would advise all my white friends that are listening tonight, just don't do it. If you want to do an athlete, wear the jersey, wear the shoes, but don't decorate your face.
You can be Sammy Sosa now. You can be late 2010 Sammy Sosa.
But you got to be careful, my fellow patriots out here. You'll be in some real trouble with this blackface.
Right, exactly. So I want to end on, before I give you a chance to give your final thoughts, I just want to ask you your thoughts on Trump. I know you were not an initial Trump supporter. I know that you are not even now a dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter. He's the I guess the horse you rode in on or whatever. How would you how would you grade him overall? If and it doesn't have to be like, a A through F grade, but how would you say overall how did you think he would do, and how has he done compared to that?
I think that I would give him like a B, maybe B minus. I think that he has delivered on some of the things that, the criminal justice reform. I'll give him a B. Let me go B minus, somewhere in there. He's delivered on some of the things. He got the tax reform bill done, which I think, that included the opportunity zones for urban cities across America, which he doesn't talk anything about. That's why I would give him a B minus, because some of the good stuff he doesn't spike the football enough. And then, like with this wall situation, which I have no problem with the wall. I just think that if we're going to keep him to part of the promise, we should keep him to the whole promise, which is Mexico is going to pay for it. Or they should have an investment in this wall, and I've always said there's a way we can make Mexico pay for this wall. Like, if he has the stomach to do it, which is every dollar they Western Union over and wire over back to Mexico, give us a couple cents, give us a couple pennies.
Or even subtract it from foreign aid. I mean, they get massive amounts of foreign aid. That was what I didn't get. So how easy would it be to say, okay, Mexico gets this much U.S. aid a year. We're going to subtract this much from it for 10 to 15 years until it's paid.
20 years, yeah.
And you can spike the football and say Mexico paid for it. They didn't pay for it, but you can at least make it look like they paid for it.
I like Ted Cruz's idea of taking El Chapo's money. That's fair. I mean,
he's not going to use
creative. And that's what I thought Trump was going to do. I thought Trump would be creative. I hope that he doesn't do the national emergency, because I think that opens up the door, for some liberal president down the road to do the same thing on something he couldn't get done in Congress. So, for certain executive orders and stuff like that. Now, if he wants to try to shift around some money, like I said, I have faith that he's creative. So I give him about a B minus. I think that there's certain ways that his messaging, and because he's appealing so much to his base, that he doesn't realize that if he chilled out just a little bit, he could probably get a bigger swath of people. I think there's a lot of, in particular, black men. We're now the forgotten swath of voters out here, because black women have become the more, what I would say, vocal and dominant. If you look at the elected officials and whatnot, black men are, and kudos to that. But I think black men, we can still identify with Trump's machismo and things that he does, and we don't have to like you to say you're getting the job done. I mean, that kind of goes along with your job. As long as my paycheck is there on Friday,
Right.
I don't have to like you. We don't have to be friends. And Trump is a transactional president. He does things based on transaction. I think that if he could figure out a way to get more black men on board with some simple things, I think he would do it. I just don't know if right now, he's such in a thing about keeping his base all 100% on board. Like with this wall, the last time he let Rush Limbaugh and
Hannity and Coulter and all of them, yeah.
And Coulter and all of them talk him out of just doing the deal then. It wasn't going to be the deal is essentially the same thing now. So
his supporters don't give a.
He has to stop listening to them. He has to realize that he's bigger than Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. Those guys, his Trump supporters will still vote for him. If he came back tomorrow and said, you know what, I did everything I could to get this wall done, but this is what we're going to be able to do. This is our border security, whatever. Most Trump guys are sticking with him. It's only those hardcore. I kept saying, if the only reason you voted for him was to get the wall, then you probably would be a little disappointed because, we're talking about eminent domain. Republicans don't like government taking over people's land. There's just a lot of other things that go along with I think that Trump just has to learn how to, he has to massage some of these folks a little bit better, but I think I give him a B. I think he's done pretty good.
Fair enough. Donald Trump could, I think, completely go 180 on every single policy position he has, and 60% of his supporters would stick with him. That's my opinion. I think that a lot of them are just with him for the ride.
I think 80%. I mean, like I said, it might be 20% of the people that literally voted for him to build a wall. Like they want this wall up to show that these folks in this region are not welcome in our country unless they do it the right way. If that was what you come on, okay, then I get it. But I think most reasonable Americans, once they realize it, even with immigration, there are economic benefits. That's why Texas is so profitable. I mean, let's just be honest. They have benefited off the backs of the immigration problem for a long time. So, I mean, we just had to figure out a way where we're not rewarding people for breaking the law. And for the people that have been here, like Dreamers, I thought that's what he should have did. I was thinking about possible scenarios. Like, give me your idea on this. Either he offers the Dreamers for the wall.
I thought he was going to offer amnesty for Dreamers in exchange for funding for the wall. Because for Democrats, that's an easy one. $5 billion to the wall is nothing in terms of what the wall is going to cost. It's a couple 100 miles, if that, right? Dreamers' permanent amnesty is like, that's a permanent thing. They're here for good. They can eventually become citizens and everything else. I thought he was going to do that. What scares me is that he's going to push some because he isn't totally against gun control, and neither is the NRA. There are few versions of gun control. The NRA is, and I know you can't say that, but so I said it. Wayne did not say that. I said it. And I'm so scared that they're going to be like, well, how about we do this, assault weapons ban in exchange for the wall? And I think he'd jump all over it. So that scares me too. My idea,
or he might make a deal. This is what I think the doomsday scenario for a lot of conservatives should be worried about, is that he would be willing to replace RBG with Obama's pick, Garland, whatever his name was.
Oh, like Merrick Garland?
He would make a deal like, I will give you someone that you can approve of for this next Supreme Court justice if you give me my wall. Trump has his baseline is as long as I can say I won.
As long as he can say he made a deal, exactly. That's what scares me about him, because I'm it's a little
scary, but I think he does, for it not go that far. I think that's where the Rush Limbaughs and Coulters will go. But I think the biggest problem was we should have gave him. I would have been okay with the Dreamers because they've already been here. These are people that live here. I would have been okay with that. I think that Stephen Miller, who I've always said I suspect some Latin dude took his babe in high school. This guy he does not like the idea that he's the one that deep sixed it last time. So Trump doesn't have a set core values. He knows about wins and losses.
Right.
I think that's what you have to look at it at. And yeah, there are some risks in thinking like that because he could give away something that might be important to conservatives, but it's not important to him.
He didn't give a crap about it.
He has a good pulse on that, and I think that the one he knows what are important to his base, and a big part of that has been this wall, tough immigration stands, is this kind of thing. But I feel like saying I'm an old school Republican. I'm guessing I'm a little neoconish on some of these issues, but he doesn't have any of those those values. He's just about wins, and if he can get wins, I think that he will cut some deals that maybe some conservatives might not be too comfortable with. But
right.
I think even those conservatives know, though, that Trump is more popular than them. I mean, at the end of the day, he can go on Twitter and dog out some. I mean, that's why Paul Ryan and them they were scared of him, because he had the social media.
Destroy them. Yeah, he can destroy them. He can destroy them with an audience that 70-80% have never even heard of them. So their only exposure, and Ted Cruz learned this. All of these people learn the first bit of exposure that these people are getting to their names is Donald Trump trashing the crap out of them for days on end, and that sticks with people. And so
Lion Ted Cruz,
Little Marco, Crooked Hillary. Listen, people even knew who Hillary was, and he still smashed her. So I mean, it is what it is. But my thing that I will say, I don't have use for Trump or really any politician in general, but the thing I like about Trump as an anarchist is that, so we have this idea of government being something bigger than just a bunch of people in buildings telling us what to do. We look at these flags and we look at these monuments and we look at these, it's almost like a religion. We look at these big religious icons and these pledges and anthems, and it becomes something bigger than itself. It's like this, almost like this higher authority that we look at, that that we'll say, well, you don't have to respect the person, but you have to respect the dignity of the office and think. It's like how you would talk about a pastor. And then Donald Trump is standing in there with a big smile on his face, this orange spray tan, and a bunch of McDonald's. My favorite picture in American government White House history is Donald Trump sitting there with a big smile on his face and his arms out, and all these Big Macs and chicken nuggets out on the. It's like he has completely eliminated any pretense of the idea that there's this noble thing about government. It's just a bunch of people who are robbing us and telling us what to do. And that I appreciate about him. I also appreciate that he has single-handedly stopped this idea that, oh, you can't say that, it's offensive.
Yes.
I can say whatever I want.
When I came into the party, when I started working for the party in 2013, 2014, they checked my profiles on my Twitter, social media, making sure I didn't say anything that was too out of line. When I was working for the party, I was constantly being, reprimanded of, be careful what you say online. You represent us. And by the time Trump was elected,
Trump comes along.
By the time he was elected, I will say that he freed me to be the man that I wanted to be on social media, because we were a reflection of our president. We can say the outlandish stuff. I mean, he would post things that I wouldn't want to post on his own account. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that he's that he does things out of the norm, that like when I heard all the military guys that were so mad at him for wanting to pull out all these different wars, I'm like, you know what? They've been doing this for 30 years, but it's been their job to keep us in wars. Of course they disagree with Donald Trump. And so
of course.
That's that's like a scientist that doesn't agree with your methods. He doesn't, they want to continue this. It's big business. They're like, what are we doing all this training for if we're not going to use it on somebody?
Exactly.
We got to test out these guns. We got to test out this equipment. How long does this food really last in the desert? We won't know until we try it. And so, I appreciate the fact that he's just broke the norms. I'm interested to see over this next generation of politicians how that works. Now you see everybody, drinking beers on their Instagram, eating at home, and so they're trying to be relatable. When Trump, his lifestyle as a billionaire wasn't relatable. We had seen it already, but he's relatable in the fact that I do believe that when he worked at Trump Towers or when he was watching construction projects, that he was probably just as comfortable with the guys on the ground in construction hats, cussing, talking about women. I believe that was Trump's personality. And so
yeah, he doesn't seem uncomfortable with anyone.
No. When I met him, I honestly remember saying, like, dang, I actually felt like this guy was listening to me. Like, it was right. When I met him, I honestly felt like, the brief 2 minutes we might have talked, and I'm like, he's at least listening, because I've met a lot of politicians that look at me right in my face, and I know that they weren't listening to me.
Right, they were just looking right through you. Yeah,
there's definitely been some guys that, and of course sometimes they're in the habit of shaking hands and just keeping it moving. But
right.
I felt like he has a personal skill that a lot of politicians, what I call lifetimers, they don't have, because they've been taught not to say this, not to think this way, not to give out an answer that will offend people. And so, it's just a different world out here.
Right. So we're wrapping up. And like I said, just give the legalized grenade launchers a chance. Just, I know you're scared. I appreciate you saying you're scared. Just give.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. Flamethrowers, grenade. I don't like restricting people's instruments to protect themselves.
Yep.
If we had made them illegal, you best believe criminals have them anyway. So.
Oh, of course, exactly. So you have to be able to fight the criminals with your own grenade launchers against their grenade launchers. This is an arms race.
There's no point of that. But, we got to be careful with the heroin and the meth and stuff yet, because they're making that stuff at home now. That's half the problem. Is that we don't.
That's the problem.
They're making this stuff at home, but it's we gotta have a little government.
I'm gonna get you. But we just, like you said, just try a small town where we legalize everything. We'll see how it works out. Like 5-year plan. But so, Wayne, thank you so much for. What's that?
We need them to pave some roads. That's all we want the government to do. My basic thing is pave my roads, and keep our borders. And I mean, when I say borders, I mean our oceanside borders too. To keep us safe, man. That's about it.
But see, if you got a grenade launcher, you can keep it safe yourself. I'm telling you. Just give it some time. Sleep on it, and then we'll talk about it later. So, Wayne, I appreciate you coming on. I want to give you a chance before we go to any final thoughts you have, anything you didn't get a chance to say, any of your stuff you want to plug, anything you want to talk about. Wayne Bradley, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Spike, again, for just having me on the show. I didn't talk. I just want, if anybody is interested in listening to my radio show, my podcast, you can go to my favorite site where everything's at is conservativebro.com. I didn't give you that one earlier. Conservativebro.com, radio show. I'm on iTunes, or I was a podcast on iTunes, and I'm also on SoundCloud. So, I have a lot of interesting content on there. And you're always welcome to go check that out. And like I said, just keep watch, keep your eye on everybody in terms of this government and our elected officials. I know everybody loves, in our world, people are maybe 50-50 on Trump, but I think you just got to keep an eye on everyone, keep them honest. What I've done is been able to, if I see something bad, just say you don't like it. Doesn't mean I wish there was a way you could communicate that you don't have to agree with everything Trump says or does and still be a Trump supporter. I'm a Trump supporter, but, I don't, even with your own family, you can't agree with everything that a person does. And so I just think that we need to, as a Republican Party, we should probably do a little bit more of that to think of the long-term health of the party. But that's what I'm going to leave people with. It's okay to disagree a little bit. Let's just keep it respectful. And actually have the conversation of what you disagree about instead of just telling the obvious that you might disagree with someone.
Fair enough. And I will add conservativebro.com to the show notes after we're off. Wayne, thank you so much for coming on. I hope to have you on again in the near future if you had a good time. And just stick around with me because I'm going to talk with you during the outro. But thank you again for coming. Guys, thank you so much for watching this Valentine's Night Eve episode of
Yes.
Exactly. So thank you for tuning in for this episode of My Fellow Americans. Check us out tomorrow night, Valentine's Day night. Thursday night will be the Writer's Block. Matt Wright will have Jason Lyon on. They have some big news for you, so be sure to check that out. The Writer's Block on Friday. Happy Side Chick Valentine's Day. Have a great weekend. Wayne didn't say that, I did. And then on Tuesday, be sure to tune back in next week for the Mighty Waters of Freedom, where Matt Wright and I will parse through the week's news. And then check me out again this next Wednesday on My Fellow Americans, I will have Christopher Harris of Unhyphenated America on. This is my show, and so for Black History Month so far, I've had nothing but Black conservatives on because this is my show and I can do whatever I want. So thank you. What's that?
You knocked out the park with those guests.
I'm hitting on all cylinders. I'm happy. So guys, thank you again for tuning in. We will see you soon, and God bless you.
They say about an eye for an eye in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny I would cry when a loved one dies? I recognize that body outside, bullet holes in the body that was alive. Now confined to a chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line. There's a pointless murder happening all the time. Either lose your life or mine. Caught up in them versus die. That ain't how it started, nah. How were we supposed to survive? There's a war going on outside. Who would want to raise a child? Whom the tomb is flashing by. Now you have to say goodbye when you watch them on the news at 5. Don't tell me how, tell me why.
We